you know. And I said, what's going on in your mind is you don't know about the car, you don't know what's going on, you're going as fast as you can, and you broke down, and you're worried about that, and all these people behind you, and he kept saying, I remember he said, can't they see that I got problems? Can't they see that something's going on with a car? I've got the flashers on. He said that. He said that, okay? And I said, yeah. I said, but you didn't think about what was going on in their life. All you could think about what was going on in your life. Isn't this a good story? He said, yeah. That's kind of what he said. He did 3 yow's in a row, you know, a little different each time. And so he realized that, and he kind of calmed down, because see, you know, when we get out of that emotional part of our brain and we stop sending all that cortisol into our system, and we're all tight, we're ready to fight or, you know, take off, flee, you know, but then we start calming down, and we got to thinking, yeah, that's probably what's going on there. And he said, I shouldn't have. I'm a Christian. I really shouldn't have did that. You know, I know better than that. I feel kind of bad about that. His words, not mine. And so I said, well, you know, stuff happens. You know, everybody here knows that stuff happens, right? Is it in the biological realm? You know, it's a biological matter. Yeah. And so, so here we are. Stuff happens, and we don't think about what's going on because we only think about our stuff, right? But if we can become aware of that, then things, you know, we can back up for a second and think, well, what's going on in somebody else's life, and so So what I want to talk about here a little bit is that we, Dr. Carolyn Leaf, which is a Christian neuroscientist, which I've been going over her material for the last 3 or 4 years, and it's pretty mind expanding, and I really enjoy it, and studying the mind and the quantum physics aspect of things. But I thought about showing this video here, but I'm just going to give you a little bit of information out of it. Is that all right? Maybe in the future. But she was talking about addiction, okay? And she was talking about it from the neuroscience perspective. Anybody interested in that? Okay, all right. She's got the top 7 addictions. Anybody interested? Yes. All right. So, what do you think is the 7th? Okay, not the top, not number 1, but the 7th addiction. Anybody want to guess what 7th is? Yeah, the seventh one. You know, the top 7, and this is the not the number 1 addictive. Do what? Self? No. It is a substance. I'll just tell you. How about that? Cocaine. She said cocaine was the 7th on the scale. All right? Okay? Number 6 was alcohol. Yeah, see? That's the reason why I started at the bottom. Okay? And so because, and she said this is the addiction, and we're going to blow your mind when we get to the number 1. And number 5 is psychotype drugs, pharmaceutical drugs. That's number 5. Number 4 is heroin. Okay, all right? And we know that with some, I'm not going to use mental disease, but mental disorders, and there is a big difference between the two, right? Oftentimes people use several different substances and also behaviors to deal with their mental disorders. And do what? Self-medicating. And because see, a disorder is a thought pattern, okay? Even though they have now got it into the medical stuff as they kind of push it together with a disease. But it's an addictive force. Number 3 is cigarettes. Cigarettes. And now, she didn't discuss this, but I know from my own study, not only from the chemical aspect of the addiction in nicotine, but also from the boy, I'm struggling with words tonight. The psychological, that's the word I'm looking for, psychological aspect of what smoking gives us as an addictive force, because of, believe it or not, a lot of the comforting or soothing aspects of smoking. Do you understand what I'm talking about? And you can, the nicotine is a chore, but the psychological, at least with folks I've worked with, has been even more of a challenge, because cigarettes become your friend. It's your passive friend, all right? And it's always there, and it never ever challenges you. It always tries to help you. Even though it doesn't do a very good job of it, it tries. At least you think so, right? Am I telling the truth? Yeah. And so now this one, next one, number 2. Are you ready for this one? This is from Dr. Leaf, neuroscientist. She says processed foods. Do what? Sugar. Oh, sugar is, but see, they processed foods put all, one of the main elements is sugar, okay? But they process it and they put chemicals in it to affect you physiologically and psychologically because of all that they do. I mean, they spend big bucks on processed foods, right? And then all the other stuff, as far as the preservatives, is another problem. Now, you want to know what number 1 is? All right, you're not going to believe this one, okay? But I'll have to explain it. All right? She said the number 1 addiction is love. Okay? And we can see what people do for love, what people want, how that's on our list. And actually, it is a human need to have love and belonging. That disputing that. And she didn't say this as being a negative, that love is a number 1 addictive force, because the fact of it is, she says we are wired for love and that we need love. In fact, I think it was back in the 50s that they did a research on babies, infants, that were newborn infants, and they put one group in one area where they were actually held and do what? They did it on monkeys, they did it on rats, they did it on several, but because particularly in children, the babies, because they called it developed a syndrome of failure to thrive syndrome. Okay, but I know I remember hearing about they did Kansas State or Kansas University, I don't remember which one. They did it with rabbits, and they actually even fed them a carcinogen. The rabbits. One group they let the caretakers pet them and touch them and care for them. Okay. The other group, they told them they couldn't touch them. Just feed them. Don't touch them, because they didn't want any what they called tactile stimulation or love. All right. And the ones that were touched or loved, okay, their body was able to offset the carcinogens that were in the food. And we have to have it to really function. Now the trouble is, a lot of us live off anger and fear, which is just the reverse of love, right? And then we find mechanisms to help ourselves get through our fear and our love, right? You know what I mean by mechanisms? You know, substances, behaviors, thought patterns, okay? And we have to do that to survive, right? Because if we don't survive, we wouldn't be here. But the trouble is, survival just keeps you alive. You're in that state of suffering and torture. That's what addiction and substance abuse is all about. Torture, self-torture, mental, emotional torture, suffering. Did I say suffering? I want to make sure I say suffering, okay? Because I'm trying to remember what philosopher said, that all suffering is self-imposed, and what he meant was that emotional suffering, even though there are some physical things that we suffer about, but isn't it true that emotional suffering is far more painful than any physical, right? And a lot of times our suffering is self-imposed, because we make up ideas. Well, I don't deserve love. I don't need to be accepted, or I'm not good enough to be accepted, or I should reject myself because I deserve it. Back to what we talked about earlier. Remember, right? So Dr. Leaf says that in neuroscience is that we are designed for love, and that all of our chemicals that are in us, and by the way, your brain is the biggest pharmacy in the world. It creates chemicals that your body needs, and there's no side effects. And then your brain knows exactly what you need and how much you need. Does that make sense? Trouble is, we have so programmed ourselves that we put so many limits and blocks on ourselves. You know what I'm talking about? Like, we think about things that send us down other neural pathways that create different chemicals, like fear and anger and hate, right? See, that, and one of the neat things that I learned about these chemicals, see, and all the chemicals are good, but Dr. Leaf says that when you think, you actually grow matter in your brain. Actually, she says you create real estate. In other words, you actually grow stuff. The trouble is when you think toxic thoughts or hateful thoughts, then what you're doing is you're using the same chemicals that are used to produce good things, but you flood your system with them, and it actually then burns your brain tissue. And she says with MRIs you can see black spots in your brain. Isn't that interesting? And so, now of course 25, 30 years ago they said that your brain doesn't grow, but see in the last 20, 25 years they've found out your brain can grow, and they call it neuroplasticity. Isn't that interesting? So you say, well, I've messed myself up, I'm locked in, I can't get any better. That's another one of those lies. Because we see people get better all the time around here and in other places. We just had a testimony from that a little bit ago. And so the love, of course, when I mentioned it, most of you thought about the bad aspects of the love addiction. But the fact of it is, what we need and what helps us in recovery is understanding that there is that power outside of ourselves, our higher power, God, that's there, and He's not there to hurt you or harm you. He's not even there to judge you, because He already judged you, and He sent somebody to take care of that judgment for you so that you can be forgiven. So He's not there to beat on you or to pick on you. It's all about He wants to help you, to nurture you. If I can get you to stop beating up on yourself and stop sabotaging yourself, okay? Stop shooting yourself in the foot, figuratively speaking, then you'll start getting better. And how many times have you heard me say, if you just won't sabotage yourself? So, the Scripture says that love thy neighbor as thyself, right? And so, what we need to do is we need to start treating ourselves at least as good as we do our neighbor, people around us, right? I remember the day that I understood this, that I needed to be my best friend instead of my worst enemy. Anybody know what I'm talking about? I needed to be my best friend. And that sounds so simple, but it was very challenging, because I'd lived my life hating me. I hated me. I thought if I hate me, that will make me do better in the future. How did that work out for you? Didn't work out good for me, okay? It only made me worse. We talked about that earlier, remember? So I had to change the way I thought about me. I hadn't planned this, but I think this would be a good time to put this in here as an exercise that I used to help me. Anybody here ever look in the mirror? How many of you ever really look at yourself in the mirror? Really? You look yourself right in the eye, right? Now, sometimes we'll look at our skin, sometimes we'll look at our eyebrow, sometimes we'll look at our lips, but we don't really look at ourselves. Maybe some of you do. In fact, I've worked with people, and I say, look in the mirror, and I don't want to look in the mirror. I'll just look in the mirror. Or they'll look in the mirror, but they will look at me in the mirror. They won't look at themselves in the mirror. And I said, no, look at yourself. Look at yourself in your eyes. Look at you. And that's not even the tough part yet, but it's pretty tough. And I had to do this. I did this. I practiced this. I looked at myself in the mirror, and I said, I love myself. And it tasted so bitter. I was lying because I didn't love myself. But I knew that I needed to practice, because, see, when I was 11 or 12 years old, I stood in the mirror and looked at the mirror. You've heard me say this. I looked in the mirror and said, I hate myself. I hate you. And I did that to try to make myself hard. And it worked. I could reject you before you got there. Because, see, I wasn't going to let anybody get close. Yeah. And so I rejected everybody. Okay? Because my point is, if you knew me, you'd reject me anyway, so let's just get it over with, right? And I protected myself. So I just rejected everybody and hated everybody. In fact, my parents told me when I was 10 or 11 that they were concerned because I wouldn't talk to anybody. Because I really didn't talk to anybody. Not because I couldn't talk, just because I didn't want to encourage anybody to come into my world. You know what I'm talking about? I used to have a cousin that would try to get me to talk, and she got very frustrated at me because I wouldn't. You can't make me. Does that sound familiar? I did have my ability to have a little bit of stubborn streak, but I've used that for maybe some good things now. So what I want to challenge you to do is to look in the mirror and talk to yourself. Practice what you want. And I remember it tasted so terrible in the beginning. And I said, I love myself. And see, we need to look at ourselves and say that. And I'd say it 60 times. Okay, because then I'd say, I love myself. And then I'd say, I love myself. 10 times. And then I'd say, I love myself 10 times. Then I'd say, I love myself. Because you have to practice what you want. Don't practice what you don't want. And I did it out loud, okay, where I could hear it. Because that opens up a different part of your brain, accesses a different part of your brain. So you say it, you see it, you hear it, and it starts to work in you. I had a treadmill sitting right beside a mirror, and I used to run on the treadmill and say that in the mirror. Practice it. Practice it. Practice it. And it will have an effect. What do you think about that? Okay? Any questions? Yeah. You may.
I was just like you. When I first started coming here to Saturday Night Live and to church here, I did not talk to nobody. Nobody. I would share, I wouldn't testify, I wouldn't do anything.
Now we can't get you shut up. Yes, you do. They don't have to, but it's probably in your best interest.
Now I can talk.
Thank you, Linda. Thank you, Linda. Any other questions? Any other questions? Any other statements? Anybody get any big ideas tonight? Thoughts? You can't heal a wound by saying it isn't there. Jeremiah 6:14. I found that probably 25 or 30 years ago when I was teaching a divorce recovery class. And it's powerful scripture. Yeah. Yeah. It is a lie. It's true. Yeah. Sometime I was listening to one in the neuroscience area, and he was talking about how we learn, and as children we learn in one pattern, and as adults we learn usually by pain, and we're going to talk about that here in the future. And believe it or not, asking for help is some of that pain that we experience, but it helps us to open up and make some changes. And for there to be recovery, we got to get healed inside. Stephen.
Oh, I was just going to say something, like what, what you were saying before we came up here, maybe they were watching Steve Furtick on TV, on DVD. Something he said was, he said, things you run from are usually what end up running you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep, things that you run from end up running you. Yep. Feel your fear and do it anyway. That's what I say. All right. May the Lord bless you and keep you, and may his face shine upon you.